podcastjuice.net.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, men, women, everybody, listen, we got a special, I always say this, we got a special show today, but we definitely got one for you. And let me welcome to the show, without no further ado, Jill Jones.
Thank you.
So I know everybody's listening like, so what? Like, yes, she is here with me. Also joining me today, Mr. Big Sexy and Saxer. How you doing?
Oh man, happy to be home, ready to roll. Got a beautiful woman, got my boy on my podcast. Let's roll and do this.
Let's do this. And yo, we actually got some royalty from the, Princedom music family right here, and we got to roll the red carpet out as such. But let me say this, it's definitely a pleasure to have you on. I've been watching you, the listeners been watching you for a long time. Listen, when Purple Rain came out, I was a young boy. But I know, I saw you, I was like, damn, what? I was like, huh? And actually,
I was a big 7-year-old.
Wow, hey. Actually, I think I was like
a baby Huey type.
I think I was a freshman in high school, and I was just like, okay, I see you, Prince. I see you, Joe. I understand. But let's get this thing. What we like to do on this show is we like to really dial back and get into the history of like where you came from, and just kind of go through the journey if we can. And so, first of all, Jill, where are you at today? Where are you calling us from? What area of the world or country?
I am in Los Angeles.
Okay. And
now, I don't live here all the time. I split my time between here and Germany, although this year I've been here a lot because I started a company. And well, the company was started in Germany, but I'm expanding it over here. So I've been named the head girl in charge. And so I have to kind of be here for a little bit.
You mind asking what kind of company is it, if you mind telling?
It's a live streaming and independent recording in real time platform.
Oh wow!
So that's what we're expanding on over here. But it's 4K, 192 channels.
Wow!
It's pretty powerful. And as I said, it can be utilized for a few different things. It can be utilized for people who want to record in real time without waiting for the uploads. It's even for video editing, so that everybody is in the same session while the edit is happening. There's no real delay on that part. And now we've just been expanding into really going into the live streaming in 4K areas.
Interesting. What's the name of the company?
Mainly a lot of voiceovers. It's called Connix One.
Connix One.
And a lot of our companies that have been using them are based in Europe. Mm-hmm. And, we have stronger capabilities here for just the average person to operate this type of system and utilize its performance. Because our internet and what people actually have at their disposal here is so much really greater than even in Europe, because ours is a little faster.
That's what I've been hearing. Yeah.
Totally. It is. So you can really accomplish a lot and really never leave your home. I kind of see that most in the future, most jobs will be at home or remote. Mm-hmm. And I think that, it'll be like a remote system. And also yesterday during the hacking, we were not touched or impacted at all.
Oh, okay.
So with cyber freaks out there who have nothing better to do than to, that it's impossible for them to touch us. Impossible.
All right.
I hate to say impossible, but I'm confident.
Now, my show gets shut down now. They could come at me. They're like, Jill was talking
that
stuff.
Was crazy because they utilized everybody's personal video capabilities and you inside regular people to charge the system at dime. I mean, it's sort of like they really did attack, and they involved many innocent people and their software and devices in it. So
this
is kind of crazy when you think on that scale.
Is this that denial of service sort of attack thing? Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So they just utilize the masses and sort of take control with malware over, it could be your grandma's cell phone or your grandma's laptop because she may not be protected. And then they just take a whole bunch of those and then sort of attack the system.
Wow. Okay.
I kind of see it as like lupus of the cyber world. It attacks itself,
All right, did I miss something yesterday? Was there a site, a giant hacking
Yeah, a lot of sites got
issue?
taken down. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It hit Spotify and Twitter. And Amazon.
Wow.
So, hopefully, I can at least we know that anyone recording on my system, on our system was okay, and their music is just fine.
Nice. So
it's not being hijacked.
So you are in the tech game and, the music thing, it's going to taking this whole thing to the next level. I mean, that's what's up. That's good to hear. All right.
I think that's kind of the way it has to be. Yeah,
you got to definitely be able to reinvent yourself, learn different things and kind of go with the flow and sound like you're on that next shit, as we say, you're on the next level.
Well, I'd spent years in advertising and I had been in new business. And then I had some dealings in pharmaceuticals, then in advertising and marketing, and then got out of that, thank God, and moved into procurement and just business services. And then my last kind of stint with it was with finance and banking, and that was enough to make me just go, no. This is not where I want to be. However, it did expand my knowledge on our banking industry and also just security measures that are sort of in tech and required. And, coming back to America, the one thing that I have seen is that most people do not conduct their businesses properly. There's so many security holes and gaps. You would be surprised, even when it comes down to their copier services, the way they utilize it and the way, people here seem to want to be a little stingy with what they're doing. And I don't think people can be stingy anymore because you ultimately pay the price. Stingy pays twice. The way I look at it.
Words of wisdom. So I wanted to ask you this. So, I mean, in your business dealings, sort of the things that you're doing now, you ever come across people and they like recognize you from, you're like an iconic movie and different things. Do they ever say, oh, are you such and such? Do you ever come across that?
I think when I was younger and sort of transitioning out of the music world a little bit, I had, I had a divorce. I had just lost a deal with London Records, and mainly I lost that deal. It was after I left Paisley. My mother had gotten terminally ill, so I kind of just became a wreck, and I lost everything, like in a 3 boom, boom, boom. My marriage went down the tubes, lost my deal, and I lost something else within it. But you know what? Obviously, since I can't remember it, it's probably not that important. But I know it was really hard for me at the time, so I just did anything I could. I went bartended. Oh, I got audited like hard from the IRS.
Really?
And that's like enough to make you want to jump out of a window.
Wow.
So I just went ahead. I was bartending, and actually, of all the people who came in, the Wu-Tang Clan, I remember. And I think it was it
RZA?
One of them was like, "You're Jill Jones." And I said, "No." Because I was really embarrassed, like, oh my God, how could anybody know my pride? I had a really hard time adjusting to, wow, this is what I have to do. But it was New York, so New York is a little bit forgiving because people do all sorts of jobs in New York.
Right.
You'd be surprised just to make your ends meet, and you have to.
Got to have them hustles.
So it was a little forgiving, huh?
I said you got to have different hustles out there for sure.
Totally. I mean, I bartended in strip clubs. I really went the whole gamut. And, that going down that road was a little bit tricky because I suddenly realized, well, I must be trying to find myself after this because I was a mother, a single mom.
Okay.
And, it was two choices, like, what am I going to do? I didn't have any real skills. I'd been singing. And that just wasn't enough money for me in New York. So I went back to school. I started focusing on those things and just hustling. And then I got into advertising. But really, it was just a matter of like, okay, I have a kid and I've got to figure out. And I dabbled in singing and I would release things, but it just wasn't going to be what it was because I feel that when I left Prince anyway, when our union dissolved, I think the industry was changing really dramatically at that time. And there was a big reveal happening about the corruption within it. Mind you, I should have known. Audits and things are so important for artists to understand royalty splits, divisions, mechanicals. And usually when you're so young, you really just don't get it. You don't. They can sit and tell you, and you're like, I don't even know what they're saying. That it's really just like that. So, but yeah, and then I just went on, and then eventually now have moved into the tech world because it just seemed I'm really interested in it.
Okay. Well, if you don't mind, let's go back. I want to kind of go back to, when you early childhood, teenager. Now, I've been reading. I've read up on you before, but you've been around some very legendary, iconic people in music, black music. Now, your father, he's a brother or stepbrother to Berry Gordy. Is that correct?
My stepfather was Barry's older brother.
Wow. So were you like around?
Fuller Gordy, yeah.
Were you around sort of Motown and that whole scene?
Oh, completely. I mean, I grew up in Ohio with my grandparents up until the age of about 11.
Okay.
And my mom met Fuller somewhere when I was about 7 or 8. And so, they kept wanting me to go to, this was when everyone was in Detroit because it was the 60s. And I wasn't really ready. I had gotten very attached to my country upbringing and cousins close by and everybody and my grandparents. So I didn't really want to leave. I liked that life. I liked the records they sent me from Motown. It was pretty amazing. But ultimately, I did move when I was like 11 or 12, and I moved to when they had moved to Los Angeles by that time.
Okay.
And the Gordy family just became an extension, very different from my family, African-American family in Ohio who, worked really hard, very simple people. So coming out here was a bit of a transition for me. I was suddenly thrown into like Beverly Hills schools. Oh. And so that was a little bit of a tricky thing just to see some of the things that people have as children and their attitudes and all of that.
How does that? And, I was ask you a question about that. So coming from Ohio and you going into this Beverly Hills high school, and I want to keep it up front as well. Going in there, and you said as an African American, I guess, back in the days, would have said, "Oh, she's light skinned." And I'll keep it real. Like I had no idea. Yeah. When I first saw you in 1999 video, I was like, "Oh, Prince got a cold ass white girl." Like I didn't know. What I mean? I'm just saying that's how it came across. But to hear, and I know you identify and you are African American. Was there any sort of like racial sort of things coming into that school? Did they see you as black, or was that even an issue?
Well, they probably, yes. I think they knew I was black because hair care was really different back then. Okay. And I had gotten it cut really short. I used to have really long hair, and I got it cut short. So, when girls cut their hair, it's really like, and I had gotten it cut because some white people had taken me to a beauty salon, and it was all white, and they didn't know what to do with my hair, so they cut it all off. So that was in Ohio, and so what was really weird was coming here was kind of a big transition, because I grew up with all of those people in Ohio, and I was getting ready to go to the middle school in the sense of was here. I was really surprised about all the Jewish holidays. That kind of freaked me out, because I was like, what is this? We had Mr. Kaufman in Lebanon, Ohio, who just Mr. Kaufman, and I don't think anybody was celebrating taking off for any Jewish holidays, but I was like thrilled. I was like, we get a day off? Oh, wow. Or you don't get to go home early? Okay. That was amazing. I kind of gravitated between all the different pockets of groups. It's like any high school. Mm-hmm. You had the surfer crowd, the beach crowd. You had the Asian kids kind of hung together. The black kids hung together. It's weird. It's like you kind of flock to where you're comfortable. The theater group, they're always the ones. Then I ultimately ended up there. And Lenny Kravitz went to the same school. He was a little younger. And so ultimately we all ended up in the theater group, and he was in band.
Interesting.
So it was a great thing to see, an experience. Then you had the Persian kids who all came because Iran had toppled and the revolution was going on. So it was kind of a real diverse place at the time.
All right. When did you start at any point at this time where you kind of like had an inkling that you wanted to sing, or were you singing already a little bit around the house?
Well, when I used to sing more when I was younger in Ohio, but I had wanted to be an attorney because that's kind of what I grew up around and what I knew. But then coming out here, I think the Gordy household, the Gordy family, is a very close-knit family, and they do a lot of things together. I think that people could learn a lot if they just knew the importance, really, true importance of family. Ultimately, it really reveals the character of everybody in it and the support structure. And I think that was kind of amazing for me to see all of these people who sort of shared in their success, inclusive. It was competitive, but in a healthy way. So it kind of changed up my game a little bit. I was like, what am I doing? There'd be family get-togethers, and someone would play the piano and sing of the children, of the young people. So the older people nurtured your spirit and your goals. It was really, beyond anything I'd ever seen in a group family setting. And then you'd have Stevie Wonder come in and play. Wow. So then the kids who just played would be like, oh my God, I got to up my game if I want to like play in this ball court. And everything was competitive on a great level. Like we used to have big family backgammon tournaments. And I mean big, where the kitty was huge because everybody had put in. And every kid that went in to play, you were determined, I'm going to win. I'm going to get third place or first place, second or third. It was like you just wanted something. Tennis was the same way.
Okay.
And so it's something where, and my stepfather was a professional bowler before he started his printing company, and he sold his company and gave his money to Barry to start Motown.
Oh, wow.
Damn, he sold his machines.
Wow.
And he gave money to his brother. So it's really interesting that, and they were just, it really is a pretty spectacular family. I mean, sure, families have their things and their issues, but this was something else. I just really, it's something that I think every family, white, black, brown, everybody should take into nurturing their next generations.
It sounded like there was definitely a spirit of excellence
yes,
in there, you know what I mean? So, wow. Like, so at a certain point, Tina Marie comes into this picture. When do you first meet her?
I met Tina when my stepsister, Iris Gordy, had another artist called Tata Vega. And
oh, man. Heard that in a while.
Yeah. Yeah, and Tata was so amazing. So Tata was kind of like the one everybody was kind of focusing on at the label. And then my mom ran into Tina, and because Tina came in with a group. She'd been signed with like a band.
Okay.
And they were going to drop them. And sort of her friendship with my mom is kind of what saved her from getting the cut. Because Tina just started getting invited to our family affairs, and that kind of put her directly in front of Barry. Like so at those get-togethers, it'd be like, pick up a guitar, and she'd start singing, and he started to really see another side of her. I remember one night, he spent really an incredible amount of time. All of them spent an amazing amount of time with her, and she sang about 8 or 9 songs. And then from there, it jumped into, okay, we'll have her like work with, was it Bobby McNair or Bobby? No, maybe it wasn't Bobby McNair. I do like Bobby McNair, by the way, but it might have been. And then she went in and did demos, and they gave her access, and she just started to have more access because she actually got access to the top of the label. Okay. And then my mom started managing her.
Wow.
And she lived with us.
Oh, wow. Okay. So this, relationships, were you guys kind of like kind of almost like sisters, or was she?
We were like sisters. I mean, at first there was a little adversarial at one point because I was like, oh my God, she's taking up all my mom's time. However, my mom was always in the business and traveled so much. So I was kind of self-sufficient on my own too, but Tina did become like a sister. She'd take me to school, drive me in her periwinkle blue Vega. I remember. Yeah.
Old school cars.
I learned how to drive in that car.
Periwinkle blue Vega. Oh man.
Periwinkle blue. She loved that car. And so yeah, it was just great. I mean, I'd gotten into an argument with somebody at school. Tina showed up and told the girl to back off. It was really funny. I mean, nowadays they would have thrown her in jail, but
hilarious. Hilarious.
And so she exposed me to a lot.
Okay.
Tina would therefore open up my life to taking me out to like hanging out in Venice Beach, California and Rose, those avenues. It was like really a little bit rougher, but I made some wonderful friends, and I just got a different slice of life totally around that time. And she took me to the first ever and only ever Led Zeppelin concert that I'd ever gone to with John Bonham drumming.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the one at the Forum.
Damn. All right. So at a certain point in time, she really starts to blow up and come into her thing and putting stuff out. How do you become like, a background singer for Jill Jones? Was it just sort of a natural sort of progression? Like you're around? It's like, hey, Jill.
Yeah, I was around, and she would say, hey, can you come and sing this part for me? And and then one day she's like, you really, need to get your own style. You're never going to be Barbra Streisand, because I love Barbra Streisand. I don't know what it was. Oh, okay. I just loved her movies, and I would always just be like, I want to be that kind of I want to do musical theater. And it's a totally different type of singing, but Tina utilized me and said, hey, can you come and help me write this or whatever? So I was writing plays on a piano at my house. She helped me. I just kind of moved into it. I was convinced I was going to go to, New York and study drama. But once I started working with her, and then, of course, subsequently worked with Prince, it didn't really happen that way. And, I felt like, okay, I'm getting even more intense experience now than being in school. But, she started, really getting some advancement at Motown. And then, of course, my stepsister, Iris Gordy, had a connection with Rick James. Okay. And so because it was all family and family gatherings, Rick would come over, then they met Tina, and that's how it kind of happened. And, Rick, was at many a barbecue at our house. And it was, and some of his friends from Canada. So, yeah, it was a very interesting time. And, what's interesting, too, is that when you're also young, you don't want to do anything your parents or your family members are doing.
Okay.
For me, even though it was the Gordys, I was like, I'm going to be different. I'm not going to ask Barry for anything. I'm not going to ask anybody for anything. I'm going to do it myself.
Right.
And I've learned now in life sometimes, well, all times, you do need to ask. Because a part of that is the ego and pride. That is something that you got to always keep in check, because people who love you will not ever try to steer you wrong. And sometimes by not asking people to help you, you end up hurting yourself more. You take the long path around to arrive back at the decision you should have always had.
That sounds like a parent. That sounds like a person who lived it, and now they're like, okay, I got kids now. And now I understand what my parents was trying to tell me, and because I.
Oh, totally.
But
yeah, it's true.
So now, how old were you when you go on the road with Tina? And getting into tours, because
times.
Okay. About what age were you?
16 we started.
Wow.
16 on the road with
16,
Tina Marie.
Yeah.
Was Rick James? Were you guys out with Rick James too?
The first couple ones, no. And then at one point we're out on Sean Cassidy's tours. Well, that was safe as like.
Okay, hold on.
That was
hold on. Sean Cassidy?
Yes.
That do run Sean Cassidy?
Yes. Sean Cassidy.
Lord.
Yeah. So that was like really interesting. So I was safe as anything. If anything, I could, all the fans he had, I could have been like, you guys want to go shopping?
Hilarious.
It was like, no problem. We showed up in these outfits with butterfly wings and borderline Earth, Wind, and Fire get-ups with, like, spandex. I don't even want to tell you what the audience, the parents in there looked like at us. Like, what the hell? Yeah. And Alan and our musicians that were, like, dressed with hats on and their pimp game strong. It was just, basically that tour for the guys was like playing checkers, cards. Nothing really going to be happening. No, nothing.
Hilarious.
Nothing.
When does it?
One of the.
When does it start to shift where you get off of the Sean Cassidy and get into more, I guess, the R&B, or what I'm saying? What was that?
Yeah,
starting with the Prince?
Around 79 and 80.
Okay.
We got, of course, Rick to open for Rick, because Tina had, her relationship with him and the song or something, her song, Sucker for Love.
Yeah.
So we went out on that Rick James tour, and it's ironic because Prince had been on the earlier part of the tour and we came in on the second half.
Oh, okay.
And Rick's show, why everybody was jumping the show was because for some really weird moment, he just wasn't selling like he was, you know what I mean? Like it was dwindling. So the margins were a little bit off for us. And so we left, and then we got thrown on Prince's tour. He had gone on to headline his Dirty Mind tour. And then we opened. I think we all must have been sharing the same agent, Nick Masters, I think, who was at William Morris. But so, they were just pivoting and moving everybody around a little bit. And it was good. It worked out well for me.
Right. What I'm always curious, and I was trying to ask this of Andre Simone a while ago when he was on. But what, from not being in Prince's situation or anything, and not knowing him necessarily, what did you guys think of him early on? Like, did he seem like, and I'm grasping here, was he more sort of like an outsider to everybody, or was he weird, or was it like, who is this cat, or how did I'm sorry, in terms of like Rick James or something, you sort of
he was much cooler than Rick James, but I didn't know if it was because I knew Rick eating ribs at my house or eating chicken from the barbecue grill.
Gotcha.
So it's like really hard. Also you have to remember Rick, when I was about 15 or 16 myself, I used to bring my friends up from high school and drive up to his house at 10 in the morning during our nutrition break. We had a break, like a half an hour break. And I would just bring giddy girls up and wake up the band and, hi, guys. Do you have anything to eat? And then Jackie, the background singer, was like, oh, okay, because she was a mom anyway. She was like, oh, okay, I'll make you guys something.
Okay. So he was like family to you.
Soon I was doing it, huh?
So he was more like family, almost an uncle or something.
He was, until he ratted me out and told my mom, Jill's ditching school because she keeps showing up here with all her girlfriends from high.
Oh, come on, Rick.
Snitching.
He did. And he also said, and I don't know how she's driving because she's only 15. And, so it was really like, I was like, thanks.
So wait a minute. So Rick James, Mr. Super Freak, he was like, this little fast girl need to be at school. So you're trying to tell me?
He was definitely pushing school on me. Yeah. And it's so funny because when he knew my age, because when I turned 16, he gave me a Sweet 16 necklace. And to the point where over the years, if I'd see him, he'd go, where's my Sweet 16 necklace? I said, Rick, I'm not 16 anymore. And it was really funny. He was definitely like family, for sure. I knew his mother and, his brothers and sisters. Yeah, Rick was like family.
Okay, wow.
So going on Prince's tour, he was like a disruptor. He was like every bad boy you could think of, except he was really sweet, He seemed it. And I also liked that he made people uncomfortable. But he made me very uncomfortable to the point where I was like, I don't know, I don't really like him. And my mom was like, what are you talking about? He's going to be a huge star one day. I'm like, I don't know. But I think it was just my youth and not understanding, like, who the heck just walked in this place, And also playing it really close to the vest. Mm. I did. Mm-hmm.
So, like, I mean...
Which made why I was always sarcastic with him and distant and, like, I don't know, whatever. You're from where? He'd say Minneapolis. I was like, where is that? And then he would say, you don't know geography? Aren't you in school? I was like, well, they don't even really talk about that place.
Hilarious.
It's not that important. That's how our first kind of conversations went. And they were just kind of cute and very childish in a way. Very funny.
And so did you guys stay for the majority of the Dirty Mind tour?
Yeah, for the last part of it. And then we, I remember that tour because it was in December, part of December. I remember that I think John Lennon died around that time. So yeah, we stuck through it. And I didn't think a ton of dates, but enough dates. And, it was wild because I kind of knew that something was that I'd met somebody that was kind of going to change my life, but I didn't really know how. I just kind of knew. It's a really weird feeling. Also, I had gone once to a psychic fair, and I don't often believe in this stuff, but some woman just ran up to me in the middle of this thing. I went with my girlfriends, and she goes, you're going to meet a guy with a black car, and he's going to change your life. And I was like, a black car? I said, in the good way, or? She was good. So it was really weird. And then when he showed up and he had the black car, I knew, went, oh, it's him.
Wow. When, so the first time, again, I was a young guy. So the first time I first saw you or noticed it was in the 1999 video, but obviously before that. So after you guys had worked together, apparently, coming off the Dirty Mind tour, when did you like sort of link up with him where it's like, yo, let's start doing some
After that, Andre and I became close friends.
Oh, okay.
Andre kind of was like I was like the little sister to everybody on the tour.
Okay.
Because I was the youngest. And Andre was really, really sweet. And he had come up to me at one point. There was a party or something. He's like, how old are you? And I was like, well, I'm 17, I'll be 18. Or I was 18, I think. But I always was very naive somewhere. And he said, Prince told me you were married. I was like, I'm not married. I wasn't married. And I remembered thinking that was the craziest thing I'd ever heard. I was like, married? I am not married. So
he was trying to throw salt in his game.
Looked like, yeah.
Yep.
And Andre was like, yeah. And he just sort of, how Andre has that cracked half smile. And he also knew by my reaction that I wasn't very hip to the game. I was like, oh my God, why would he say something like that? Right? And he's like, okay, all right. So then Andre and I became close friends, and we stayed in touch. And so much to where I became friends with his girlfriend here in Los Angeles. He goes, I'm going to introduce you to somebody who will be very helpful. So it kind of got my little independence out a little bit, a little more streetwise again.
Okay.
And, country girl, Beverly Hills girl to now I kind of was like, okay, now I'm going to learn a few things. But we stayed friends through the years. And I would hear, Prince was dating Phyllis Bond or whoever. And I'd go, oh, okay. And I'd really, And I, later, and then I'd see Prince once here or twice when they came into town. And I'd drive them around in my car. And I remember one time Ola Ray was with him because I slammed the car door accidentally on her leg.
Ow! Ola Ray from Thriller?
I didn't know she was getting out on that side.
Wow.
Yeah, and Prince laughed. He thought it was the funniest thing ever. I was just like, oh, my God. So he was like this big kid. And but he definitely was appealing more to me than her that evening because it just, I don't know. My reaction was just like, oh, my God, I'm so sorry. Is your leg okay? And she was looking at me like, are you for real? Like, are you for real with that little kid act? Are you right?
I see what you was doing there, Jim.
I got an uncle who's a doctor. That guy's like, She's like, So I remember it well.
Man.
And, so over the years I was it. And then Andre was trying at some point to do his own thing because he had left. Mm-hmm. And, it was just kind of nice. It was a good time.
How does, does he, I guess a couple years later when he's working on 1999, is that some of the first stuff that you sang on some of his stuff? Or?
Yeah, when he came to L.A., because he was in Ohio and we spoke on the phone. He was with Vanity, I think, at the end of the Time tour. And that tour they had, because he told me they had just had a crazy food fight. And I was like, really? And everybody knows about that food fight now. It was like bad blood for a minute. And he said, well, I'll call you when I get there. And I always knew that the name he used was Groucho Marx anyway. So it was easy to call him. And he would call you back. Or he would call at your house to the point where my stepfather was like, I don't care if you're 18, but nobody, I heard him on the phone like, oh, I'm sorry, she can't come to the phone. It's, after 1:00. And I was like, Fuller, you can't do that. And he was like, yes, I can. He goes, I'm not going to walk all the way down the hall because I could hear the phone ringing. You remember you didn't have cell phones then.
Right.
So I went and got my own phone in my room so I could get the phone calls.
Wow. Yeah, that's old school stuff. I'll be calling my house after no while.
Yes.
Right.
No, she can't. I'm sorry. Who is this again? Prince. And I'm like, Fuller. And then I'm like, Mom, why did Fuller do that? She goes, Jill, it's like 2. It was 2 a.m. She's like, who does that?
Apparently Prince does.
Like Jill. You said you liked him. Yeah.
Jill, before we go further into this period, I want to go back to the Dirty Mind tour. When you were on the Rick tour, was that the Garden of Love tour, or was that Fire It Up?
I don't know. I'd have to look it up.
Because I'm thinking, since you said sales weren't what they were, I would hazard a guess that it was Garden of Love because that was Rick's attempt at quote-unquote new wave back then, and he changed his style up a little bit, had the skinny tie happening, and on the other end of the spectrum, you got Prince with the Dirty Mind vibe and the bikini draws happening, and you were on both of those acts. What was the vibe like between the two?
Between the two shows?
Yeah.
Prince's show was electric. People just went crazy. Rick's thing was, now that you mention it, it was like they hadn't ever seen him before, and these were supposed to be his fans.
Wow.
I think we played something, Cow Palace?
San Francisco.
Something, yeah. And I remembered it wasn't really all that full.
Wow.
So it might have been that. And I mean, to be honest, I actually would stay and watch Prince's shows. Not every night because, not every night. But, I mean, I wasn't that naive. Sometimes you have to be missed to not be showing up every night. Like, oh, it was so great. I was a little bit, but, I was trying to hide that I was,
Hilarious.
Maybe had a crush on him, but, I had to, that's just the way it was. But yeah, I think you're right about those shows because it was really weird because he really should have had more people. Rick should have. I don't know. It must have been that. The show, I don't think he had a very easy one that time.
So going to, I keep mentioning it, but the 1999 video and Little Red Corvette, at this point, you're sort of brought into the band, or at least, you're very visible at this point. What was the coming into working with him at that level in terms of, how did you meet the other people? Obviously, you met everybody in the band. Like, how was that?
I didn't know. I didn't. I mean, for the time we worked on 1999, there was no band. It was him. So I didn't meet anybody until I went back to start rehearsals for that tour, which was in the summer. So we saw each other in the early part of that year, like February, January or February, when he finished Cincinnati, that last show. And there was no band in the studio. I mean, it was just us, really. Right. I mean, he had started working with Vanity 6, I think. He was finishing up some stuff on them. And doing, finishing some stuff with the Time, flying the masters or the tapes from Minneapolis to Sunset Sound. And then they would fly out periodically. But, from when we started working, I think we were working on Sex Romance. Let's Pretend We're Married.
Okay.
Like that was kind of one of the, and Delirious was already kind of done. But I think that whole period was a very different moment for him. I don't think he wanted to be in Minneapolis because I don't know, he was spending a lot of time in Los Angeles, to be honest with you. Because he was living in Studio City.
Okay. What was it like in this early studio stuff with him? I mean, would he have most of the music done and you just come and lay your parts down, or did you actually get to see him like sort of play some of this stuff?
I'd see him do it because I spent like almost 24/7 with him.
Oh, wow. Did you know this, listening to some of the stuff, did you like know that, oh, like this shit is kind of good? Like, it's like, I ain't never heard. Was it just something special or just like, oh, this is just Prince doing his thing? Like, I'm just curious how you took it as
the first night he picked me up, Nasty Girl was done. Wow. Just like most of the track. And I was like, this is like crazy. This is amazing. And it was just every single day he had a work ethic that was crazy. I mean, it wasn't just fun and games, like just like playing around or dates. I mean, the dates were at like 3 a.m. going to, there was some little odd restaurants and stuff here. And then, drop you off home or whatever at the beginning. But then little weird stuff. It always was kind of like I'd say kind of like a very foreign movie concept because, yeah, he was definitely, had a whole different way of operating. And also he was kind of a night owl. So also when you're finished, you want to play your music and then going into the studio for days and days and then coming home.
Wow. What was the reception when those videos came out, 1999 and such, and you were in there? What did your family think?
Well, in the middle of that, having my hair dyed and changed, that was kind of like a big thing. I think that there was a little bit of talk with my mom and her, Anna Gordy and Gwen Fuqua, and a few of them had their say, the women, because they were older women and they were concerned, I think, about certain things. But they understood the process of the whole change in the image. They knew what was happening. The whole thing is they wanted to make sure, does she know? It was like, because in the part of when somebody is Svengaling you, or you're their muse for a period of time, they sort of take over your whole life and your whole world, everything in it, and they sort of extract what, 1999 is really essentially, I know the period of time, and I know why that period of time existed. He had gone through a breakup with Susan, and it was really kind of a weird transition. He had everybody, vanity. It was just a lot going on. And then I think I was some kind of refuge in the middle of whatever all that other stuff was. So the album is about escapism. Most of it is just escapism, and I feel very responsible for being that outlet. Like, I feel like, and that album was a big transition, even just on the side, not personally, but I also think for his career, because it opened up the door for him to even gain the key word access to doing Purple Rain.
Right.
And he knew that, because he knew that he wanted to make that movie all along. Wow. Yeah, he and I were like best friends, if anything.
Wow. So, as you say, 1999 opens the door for, bigger things and ideas and dreams. When was the first time you heard him mention, I want to do this I want to do a movie?
He had talked about it early at that time, because he had thought The Dawn was one concept he had.
Okay.
And that didn't really materialize. And then somewhere along the way, he reshaped it with these different, the different dynamic, because I think that the dynamic played out a little bit in real life with all the characters in a loosely based form. So when they brought in the script writer and the screen, everybody, all he had to do was look at the dynamics of everybody in the room, and he could get the characters. He could see that Wendy and Lisa were, like the Chinese mothers in the corner, and
wow,
like the tiger moms. And yet nurturing, but somewhere like, you can, come on, we got to keep pushing. And then you had me, who really loved him to death, and it's like, it didn't matter. I mean, I was like, yeah, I'll do this. We're going to do okay. And then you had Vanity, who adored him and loved him beyond and also then the tension with Morris and him. But it's so interesting, because everything he created was an extension and a projection of everything inside of him. So when someone's giving you their songs, you have to go, this is really them. Or are they trying to project it from as if they're me? So sometimes I think how Prince saw Vanity or Denise, the way he projected it were of two minds. One was the business mind, and one was his heart mind. And I think she was conflicted, maybe because she really was a gentle spirit and a really good woman, but nobody had ever really given her the opportunity or chance to be, because they all became so overpowered by her beauty. Okay. And that's the plight of really beautiful women. They actually are discriminated against, I feel. And after being around her, I can see people totally discriminate, but pretty people can't complain. Beautiful women aren't allowed to complain, but they definitely get their fair share of bullshit.
Yeah, I've never met her. I had never had a chance to meet her. I've only seen pictures, but I can imagine she looks far more beautiful than those pictures could ever sort of convey, even though
she was beautiful. Like, she had a great spirit too. Like, I remember her showing me because she used to model, she'd go, okay, let me show you things, makeup tips. We sat in the house doing makeup. She was generous, with other women's beauty, helping them to see it. But nobody would say it to her. That's what pretty girls, beautiful women go through when you're with your friends and you're all getting ready. And another friend of mine who's extremely beautiful was like, my friends would be sitting somewhere and say, all right, well, are we ready to go? And do I look good? Do I look good? And then she'd say, nobody ever looked. And she'd go, well, do I look good? And they go, oh, you always look good, bitch, or something. And, as if she should never be concerned. And that's just some stuff that women need to kind of get together. There's just some issues that we are still very far off on in our jealousy and our we still need to support and compliment and really, because you never know what people are feeling inside.
So you asked this, you mentioned this, and I kind of want to ask this, like you mentioned Vanity, Denise, yourself, Wendy and Lisa. I don't know if Susanna had been introduced at this time.
She was.
Oh, she was okay.
On the radar.
All right. Susan, from the group, and also another lady. I remember seeing her picture in Purple Rain. So freaking beautiful. Is it Kim Upshur? Is that if I'm saying her name right? How does that? You're a woman, and you mentioned sort of there needs to be more solidarity in these different things. How do you navigate these? There's a whole thing there that he has some sort of relationships with these people. Was there jealousy or any sort of, game plan?
Oh, yeah. Wow. There was jealousy. And I think that, for him, I don't know how he did it as much as, and then if we were all sitting together on the bus, then we knew, like, well, who the hell is coming now?
Wow.
Well, if he's not with you or me, well, who else is there? So, it's, it was definitely some kind of jealousy and a little bit of, not understanding, like, well, why can't you just be with one person? But when you think of it now, it's like everybody was so young. And, the girls on the road, there was really a very strong, see, that's another thing. Road girls and girlfriends are very different. Right. I learned that. And, that's a whole different world. And, we...
See,
I don't know. I think the solidarity came years later.
Okay.
As we sort of left it. Vanity and I kind of got it together a little bit at one point. And, but I've never doubted for a minute her affection and her love for him ever.
Okay. When you mentioned it,
but she also loved her career, and Prince would be the type to be like, he almost, I think, sometimes put you in a position to see do you want this or do you want us?
Right.
And that was the tricky thing, because, if you told him you wanted us, it would freak him out. So you get the, career. But then if you wanted the career, which Vanity wanted her career, but why couldn't she have it all was kind of the big question. Why couldn't any woman have it all? That was his issue.
Yeah. I would say this, as an outsider looking in, I mean, her stepping away from this opportunity and the situation to do the movie to do her own thing, that's a super, like, brave sort of move. I mean, it's like, okay, you can be in this thing here, but to walk away from that, I remember, like I said, from the outside, I was like, whoa, Vanity's not going to be on that movie, and then, of course, you bring in Apollonia, but I cannot.
But I told him that she wasn't going to be in it because Barry had called and told me. He spoke to me, and he was willing to talk to Prince about it because, as a gentleman, because it was in no way to, he respected him on that level as another African-American entrepreneur, spirit, and all of that. But he also had some words for him, which is like pacing himself. Barry was like, he just doesn't pace himself. And, I don't know if Prince ever returned the call, but I knew that she had been out there with my family, and I just knew. And
How do you?
that was what was going to happen.
How do you? Did you introduce her to some of your people, or did she somehow get introduced to them other way?
No, she somehow got introduced to them.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I had nothing to do with that. I was rarely going home for holidays.
Wow.
I was like, I'm staying out of this one.
Interesting. So you guys are getting ready on this movie, and I've read one of the scripts before and heard different stories. And you can look at the movie and tell, but obviously your character in the movie, there's more going on than what we actually saw at the that came out. Correct? Like
True. Mm-hmm.
Was there more of a relationship
it was more
between
of a,
you?
Yes, it was. The plot was more, the good, sweet girl was getting pushed more into this is what he should really want. But ultimately, that's not how the story played out, because it was really good versus bad. And I think the Vanity character was a little bit more of a hustler than Apollonia could have ever been, because there's a certain level of certain women would really gravitate to Vanity's character, and certain women and men would gravitate to me. But then with the mother scene, they cut part of that story out, which became a psychological thing. And it was a little weird for some people, in some of the testing things, like, oh man, what is happening with his mom? Is there incest? It got really people.
Really?
It was really more a testament of what people, where their brains took them. It was just this strong bond between the son and the mother. And it was very Oedipus, but they cut that out.
Huh.
It wasn't like he was in love with his mother, but in a way it was like you could see that the mother really, when they tell moms, don't tell your kids stuff, like when you're upset with your ex, like don't tell your problems to your children. Mm-hmm. You could see that that's what that relationship in that film was, that she demonized and then, just sort of talked about the father or, and from the father's actions, you could see how the child came up with his conclusions.
Wow. That's
interesting.
That's very interesting.
Interesting.
In terms of, just asking, were there other musical scenes in the movie that we didn't see?
Yeah, no, my music scene was cut. I played the piano, and it was his song Wednesday, which is a sweet song about suicide. Like, my character was so into this guy that she would have killed herself. And, it's so interesting because, like I said, his projections of how he would see you were really intense, because I think about it now and go, wow, he really, really, that the dynamic or the energy we created, because your energy is what comes from it. It is somewhere based within the two people involved in it. Mm-hmm. So there was a sense of some kind of this never-ending, unconditional kind of love that this person, that my character assumed that they say had for this guy. And even at the point of crying where she wants his happiness, even if it breaks her heart.
Mm. And so, looking at...
But I am a lot like that. That is what's so weird. That is weird, even before I really realized.
I get a lot of when you see when Apollonia comes in and she's asking you about applying for the job. Is that what I see on screen? That look that you gave her, like you looked her up and down. Was that some real Jill Jones?
It was totally real. Yes.
I was
totally
like, okay.
real, because here's the crazy thing about dysfunction. All that time we've been rehearsing with Vanity, with Denise, and even in the middle of all the dysfunction, I was used to her.
Gotcha.
I was used to the setting. I was familiar with it. I had come to terms with it. So a new energy walking in was like, oh, man. And that was the kind of thing like, oh, is this girl too good to be true? I mean, really. And that played out. And I think somewhere we actually did do that even off screen. I didn't hang out with her during the filming. Very little. And we tried very hard to keep the relationships like they were in the film on a certain level.
Can you speak? Was that sort of true in terms of like Prince and Morris as well, or?
Um, I think so to a degree. I think there was a competitiveness that existed from when they were young kids, but I also really think that Prince empowered Morris's character and really helped open him up, and finding that Sagittarian ego that sometimes it works for Morris. Morris is a real sweetheart, but he has a capacity to be a big personality when he's funny, and when he really is just himself, he's funny. So I think he helped to usher it along. Like, he found the little things and go, oh, okay. And also remember, that was also his alter ego, all of these things he was creating.
Was that a lot of Prince in that Morris Day sort of caricature?
Yeah, I think that at the beginning, yes. I think that when he even did the first album, I think it was just because Prince had accumulated so many songs in different styles. The best outlet was, how do I get these songs? The first allegiance, I think, was to the songs, and the songs kind of found the people, or people were casted for the songs.
Interesting. Wow.
So, or however it played back and forth. And, it's kind of like chicken or egg thing here when you have to deal with some of the Prince origins, like was it the chicken or the egg and the chicken? Because was the song first or was the person first? And it just all of it was him. So when he deliberately changed streams from the Controversy record and the Dirty Mind and Controversy, and he leapt right into like, I'm going to get a hit record. I'm going to play in the game. Then, he'd come all the way from the alt side and went right in, but he knew that, okay, I put a blonde girl,
right.
We cater to the MTV generation. It kind of worked. I mean, it just wasn't the typical looking R&B band anymore. So some of the lighter faces, I'd feel, my opinion, were definitely calculated marketing aspects.
And so when you guys are doing Purple Rain, and of course there's a lot of music being recorded, right? There's like, 3 or 4 albums that are sort of spawned from this period. And I wanted to ask you about The Glamorous Life. That's recently there's a version of that song that surfaced with Prince singing it, and I'm thinking it's you singing on it as well. Okay. So was that a song that you were possibly going to do or something?
I wasn't really sure. Not completely sure. I sort of laid that down because it ended up being kind of the guide, our vocals, for whoever was going to do it, but also it stayed in the song.
Wow. So you're actually, some of your vocals are on the finished song as well? Are you singing?
Yeah, my whole vocal is in the song.
Wow. So when you hear songs like that and you guys are working on these songs, do you like kind of know like, yo, this song right here is bananas, like I need to get this? Like, is there ever like, yo, who's going to do this song, cuz this song is fire? Like, or is it just like it's just another song we did?
I like the song a lot. I just think that once it went into the timbales and all the other stuff, I just, I know Farnoli wanted it to go to me because I'd been around for a bit, and they wanted to really make that move. But then Prince opted for Sheila and had a whole, to do that whole Latin thing.
Okay.
So that's how it kind of went down. And then he could therefore keep me working on other stuff too. But yeah, I didn't really sign my actual deal with Prince until 1986.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
All that other time.
Were you like, not to get in all your money business, but I mean,
my attorney told me not to sign it. My attorney was Don Passman, who wrote the greatest book of all about the music business. He had said, I don't want you to sign this. And Prince had called me when it was just getting held up, and he was I was in my attorney's office, and he goes, look, we're best friends. If you ever want to leave, just ask me. I would never hold you to something like that. And I believed him. Swear to God on my mother's life. That was exactly how it went down, and that's the only reason I signed it, because he said, and he didn't keep that promise. But, other things must have been going on in his life to make him feel that that way, I think he had a hard time letting go of people once everybody started leaving. Morris had left, Vanity left, Morris left by this time. And I think he just had a hard time. And this was around 1990. So it was kind of like me and Jerome were the last two from the, sort of sitting there. And we were the ones he clung really hard to and almost forced us to stay. Like, forced us.
Were you, so when Purple Rain comes out, I'd imagine that's the success of that must change things. More people coming into things, I'd imagine, more fame. What was your life like? What was your relationship with him at this point? Did you see less of him? I don't know if were you on the Purple Rain tour? Or?
No, didn't go on the Purple Rain tour.
Oh, wow.
But I was on the tour, but I didn't go on the tour. I hit certain cities and, and go meet up or something. But people changed. It was a very different energy, and it wasn't as simple and sweet as, even though 1999 had its harem aspects, which was still like, there's still something very sweet in it, very
sweet.
It was new, so it was tolerable, I guess, or we survived it. Purple Rain became more business in a sense, and new people, very different energies, and I'm not really good with a lot of different energies. I get used to, me too, like I'm only used to certain energies in a while, and, everybody wanted to be a star at that point. Sometimes I thought in, the Purple, before that, it was more like, let's just do this. This is fun. And like my whole thing was, when it's not fun anymore, I'm not going to do it. And I think Susan was the same, as far as like, when it's not fun, I'm going to go back to college. And so we both had similar outlooks on that. Okay.
And were you still around, sort of going in under Cherry Moon? Were you?
I was in France during the filming.
Oh, okay.
At that point, Prince, let's see, what happened with us? I moved to New York and went to school and sculpturing and art and at NYU and different places, and went to school there and had at one point he thought he wanted me in Under the Cherry Moon. I had to audition for somebody and I didn't get the part.
Wow.
But he had everybody audition. He had, I think, Anna Fantastic. Was it her for that one, or was it no, that was for Graffiti Bridge. There were other people, always. Prince always had a long list of people that he was trying to, always offering something to, and how he would work it into. But I was in New York crafting myself. I had serious piano and development stuff. I was just constantly, I even took dressage, horse dressage. I mean, can you imagine? I don't know what kind of video I was going to be doing after that. I was
when had you started working on your album yet?
Oh, we've been working here and there periodically. I had a beautiful home in New York.
Okay.
And then at one point, he was like, well, I'm going to, have to be getting engaged or something like that. It was like, yeah, I figured it's funny. And I was like, yeah, okay, fine. And then he made me do this thing with Nelson George to play the Under the Cherry Moon stuff, because he had concepts of how he wanted that to be a blurb, like, who was this girl? And now, just for the future of when my new album would come out. But yeah, it was not a bad time. I mean, we still saw each other as much as, it's like, I don't think really much changed other than I was living in New York.
Now, you said he told you he was getting engaged? Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
Jill, if I may, I read a recent article or interview with you, and you said, or you attributed as saying, that Prince wouldn't give lady friends flowers. He'd give them solo albums. And after the album was finished, most times the relationship would be, also ended at that point. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, my mother was a little more crass about it because by this time she, my mom had been a Playboy bunny and at one point in her life. So she knew some stuff, and she said, look, she was more crude about it, and she said, men, when you're with them, it's just certain men. It's just to keep you under control. And, like if you waver off the path and then all of a sudden you're like back dating them again. It's just a control issue of men, and some people call it a strong pimp game. I'm not saying that he was that, but I would say that I think that once he completed the structure or the concept, that it feels like it was completed. It was done. The whole creation was finished. And with me, there was some hesitancy in completing it. It took forever because that meant external people coming into my life and possibly having the same situation with a Purple Rain. Do you know what I mean? Now, Sheila got, to experience that on one level. However, Sheila was totally dedicated to Prince, like unbelievable. And other women, I think, of the earlier group were not going. We all wanted to go and get married, have kids, and do the. You know what I mean? We all kind of had similar things going of our desires, right. And we liked music too. We loved it. However, we wanted everything, and I think that that would have pushed it to the fire of like, oh, so now you're going out with what? He experienced it a little with Vanity because people from all over the world were contacting her. It just took the control a little out of his hands. He couldn't control that. That's just can't control the woman's emotions.
Wow. What is it? I'll tread lightly here, but I have to ask. When you made a comment, I think it was on the Huffington Post, which I was just reading that article today. I think they edited this article. I don't know if you know this or not. It seems like some things are missing.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. Well, is that something you asked them to do, or is that something?
I didn't. I don't know. I think that the sweet girl who did the interview was like her first. She's embarking in the writing arena, and so I think that I don't know what her process with Huffington is, and I write as well for a magazine, but I'm just not sure what their process is in the editing or giving it to your editor. I don't know. But everything in there is, she definitely, that was what I said.
What did you mean? You used the term, and I thought it was hysterical because I'm stupid, but it was the term plantation mistresses.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that? If you feel like, if you can explain that.
I think that, some people are like, oh, plantation mistresses. Well, if anybody knows, and a lot of people got it wrong, plantation mistresses, what color were they usually? What color were the plantation mistresses?
Hey, we already know.
They weren't black.
Say no more. Yeah.
Okay, so the plantation mistresses for me were the white people, and when white people sort of came in and started to, they'd been there, but Prince housed them. It was when they started housing him that I had a problem.
Elaborate on that. I think I know where you're going.
I think, like I said, everybody was sort of assigned a role because, in the game, it's like all of your managers, everybody, they've all, to be in it, it was always hard for African American managers and African American promoters. Mm-hmm. It just put you in a box. It was like, okay, you're going on this tour. You're going to do, you're black. Oh, you're going on black radio. What? You're black? Well,
right.
Prince knew that. He wasn't stupid. And he knew that the more white folks he had, because he could play everything. He could have been a one-man band. Mm-hmm. I mean, he could have put anybody there who didn't really play anything. Why a white person? Because it was for aesthetic. Completely. I'm not saying I was the best singer he had. I'll definitely go there. But what I will say is I utilized a position at that point, and I was the best at the time of what he had in his lunchbox. And he made it work, and he fixed it, because he wasn't going to do the black girl background singer, not on 1999 and looking like, you understand. It was like, that's getting closer to, I might get kicked back, kicked out of the machine.
Back on that chitlin circuit.
So my thing was, exactly, it was an image. Everything was an image. Everything was a creation. He had public relationships and he had private ones. And he was very, very careful about exposing his private ones. And he knew how to exploit his public ones. Now, does that question his sincerity? I don't think so. If everybody knows what the destination is and everybody's getting something out of it, what's the problem? But for me, I think that, when somebody tells you, I don't know, it's just that's the plantation mistresses thing is basically, like I'm saying, it certainly wasn't the old crew of women. I'd have gladly stayed on the in the farm if Denise and all the others stayed, because I knew who we all were.
I got you.
But once the other ones came, and it was different.
A different type of vibe or energy,
It was pandering. I felt a little bit of, people who knew how to manipulate him as much as anybody else, or pander to him. And, hello, you're so cute, and isn't he funny?
He got caught up in
or hi, Till, she's so cute. It's kind of like, I don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
I never did.
Yeah. What I find interesting is
I never did.
His managers, his management team. I mentioned Steven, a couple of other guys. Was Farnoli. Was that like a Jewish sort of based company, or?
No, they're all Italian.
Italian. I'm sorry.
All of them were Italians, and they had Little Feat, and they did have Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Okay.
And so Prince went with them. And they knew how to deal with the crossover market.
Right.
And they also had a lot of faith in him. But Steve was the youngest of the managers. Really, Bob and Joe. Joe was the, money guy who could always access that and had a lot of networks of people. So was Bob, but Bob also was more, the formidable one. Let's get down to business. And Steve was the one who he had great ears. And he had the ears. Steve had ears of gold. He could hear a hit song.
I always wonder, because, I know that they were very much a part of the infrastructure, but, the later parts of the other half of Prince's career, I always associate him with just being this independent type of guy who didn't have managers or, didn't have to answer to anybody, obviously, but I was curious, how did he work with that management team? Would he just say, hey, I want to do this, make this sort of happen? Or would they suggest sort of things? Like, in terms of like the movie, was it just something like he said, yo, I want to make this movie. Can you guys make
and they
happen?
found out how to do it because they could see the vision. I think, and then Jamie Shoup was involved. She was the other second manager who really was his day-to-day. These people loved him and cared about him and his well-being, especially Jamie, and even Steve. I think that if they saw his vision and they saw how great and genius he was, that was never a doubt. He was never going to be, placed on the back burner. There was really this mutual thing. And if he said, this is what my album cover I want it to be, they got it. And it seemed like they discussed it. They had their things but they were straight up. Bob would say, we can't get the money, or we need to do this. So here's the money. We're going to do it ourselves. And I think he liked that too. They totally, I think they were really good for him. Maybe, sometimes, they would speak up to him and say what they didn't think, like, oh no, I don't really care for this, or X, Y, and Z.
All right. So the Jill Jones album, that first album, first of all, let me say that, and I know you've already heard this, but that album is dope. My favorite song is Violet Blue. I remember first hearing that, I was like, my jaw dropped, because just that. I was like,
Thank you.
And then when you just come, so I know all your parts, but I'm not gonna play myself and try to sing. But that album has got a lot of dope stuff on that, and even back then, when it first came out, I was like, why is this not, bubbling up, blowing up and stuff? Because these cuts on here, of course, as a fan, we heard snippets in Under the Cherry Moon, not knowing that was some of your songs. But I remember when I started hearing, I'm like, oh, that was that track that was in the movie. And I remember seeing the video, Mia Boca, but it was like you didn't really see it a lot. And this is the time when Prince was hot. Everything he touched was getting played.
Well, we got banned by my moral majority, Tipper Gore's
What?
group. Wow. Yeah, and then they banned it from MTV, and it would only get played at 2 a.m. But what a lot of people don't understand is around this time, and this is where I really want to bring back, even with Plantation Mistresses and that whole concept of where I'm going with that. What it has to do with is when you're with people change when you become successful. How they interact with you, what they want from you, and if they can leverage you. Now, when Prince got Paisley Park and he wanted to do this, I remember my mom was like, "Ooh, I don't know. Vanity labels never really fare too well." I was like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "The Beatles, look, it ends up being a major tax write-off. But if somebody really wants to do it right, it would be pretty amazing. It's a very generous thing to do." Madonna actually did do that. She actually saw success. And it wasn't just a vanity label. She's a Leo. Leos are like, look, I'm not going to fail at this, and I'm going to have hits. So That's how that works. However, they wouldn't really afford Prince the same thing, because what people didn't know is around that time is when MTV or radio people started asking him for favors in order to get his acts to be played. So it wasn't just straight up, here's my new stuff, put it on. They're like, can you play our Christmas party?
Okay.
And so after a point, he's still an artist, but he's not, it's like then he had to wear all of these hats. And I think it was extremely stressful. And he did promise a couple of things to people. And he did but he ended up not doing it. I think one of their stupid parties. But that's when, this is the sad part about the business, when artists end up in gilded cages, because people go and bitch about them all the time online, and this one, and it still exists today. Somebody's always leveraging another person in this business to do something, and especially when they want to break out of it and, propel themselves forward and expand it. And everybody in this social media needs to calm down on the criticism with people, because you really don't know what's going on behind the scenes.
Right.
And that was a big factor. There were just different ways and then once he's in so much debt, then the label has more like, oh, well, now we need you to do this. You need to give us this hit or whatever. So that was a lot. And it could leave a person quite reticent and resentful of that, because you're putting out this music, you're like, what the hell? And then they're like, oh, we're not going to do anything with it. So it's kind of a slap in his face. He was really proud of our record.
This is a good freaking record. Like, I mean, I remember buying the 12 inches, For Love. You guys had like the remix on there.
And he loved the video. He had nothing to do with the video, but
Really?
he got the reels, and he just was so excited, like just beyond. Like, this is beautiful, like, because it was the first thing that Paisley had ever put out that was exquisite, like on a visual level. There was money spent, and it was just with the best of the best, and he loved that. Yeah, it was like he really, on a certain level, did treat me like a princess. I mean, in the way of that, to get me the very best of the best, and that I will always be grateful for him for that. Yeah. Really, really, truly.
You had Claire Fisher on that album.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing stuff. Like crazy. Who else worked on that album? The guy's name is escaping me. Is it David?
David Tickle?
No, David Rifkin.
David
Z.
David Z.
Yeah, that was Bobby's brother. And we did most of the recording together. We would just send Prince the tapes and stuff.
Okay.
I think there were a couple vocals. We cut Violet Blue together and Mia Boca together, me and Prince.
Wow.
And with you, he asked me to do that one. He was like, would you mind? And, he didn't really ask people to cover something of his. He hated that. But I was really like, wow, okay, sure, I'll do that. He wanted me to sing it.
Yeah, with you all day. Was it all day, all night?
All day, all night. That's the cut.
Man, that's fire.
Yeah, it is. And his version is really amazing, too.
Now, is his version is taken from a live recording, is it? Is that music taken from?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Amazing.
It is.
Amazing. So that album comes out, and so you sort of kind of breaking down sort of the behind the scenes of why I assume the label and different outlets like MTV are not supporting it as they should. Would you have an opportunity to go out and tour on it, or do any dates, performances?
We did a couple of dates with Level 42, which was whatever. I mean, it was good. They were really nice guys. But no, we didn't really tour at all. We rehearsed a hell of a long time, but nothing really manifested from that. And then I ended up going over to Europe and just doing stuff over there because Rob Dickens, who was the head of Warner's WIA over there, saw something with the album. And then things were much better there. But, to say if I played it exactly right and getting the financial support to do the touring and get on festivals, I didn't do that, and that's a mistake. I should have like initiated and tried to really figure that out, but I really didn't understand how critical and crucial timing is, it was a little difficult because I think that there was a lot of transition starting to happen and more financial responsibilities and ways to bring money back in to support this albatross. And yet his vision with Paisley and building it and all of that, those were things he always wanted. And he accomplished that. Mm-hmm. He built it. He bought the land. He did all of these things. But he worked himself very hard to get it.
Fast forwarding to Graffiti Bridge. I remember reading something about you on a plane, reading your part in the movie or something. And
yes, because it changed.
What was your parts originally going to be? And are you playing the same character from Purple Rain?
Originally, I was a girl named Electra. Oh. And it was more of a heavenly kind of existence, and with the earthbound, kid, and the darker forces. So that still existed, but when I got that script and then I got on the plane, I was reading it, and I said, what the heck happened? It had changed. The script had changed. It was totally different. And I think it was because the original script was with Kim Basinger in mind. And then that just went away whenever that went away.
So had you still had been sort of seeing him between this period, or was it like you hadn't talked to him in a while and he's like, hey, do you want to be in this movie?
I knew that they weren't together anymore, and he called and told me and said, I'm going to send you the new script. It's changed a little bit. Well, it changed a lot. And I was like, that was when I'd gotten it, and I was sitting there on the way there. I was like, okay. So I started reading, and I went, what the hell is this? I was like, what am I doing? I'm so mean in this thing. But it does reflect a little bit of how our relationship had changed a little bit. I was a little more like, yeah, okay. I'd been living in Europe for a little bit. And I remember he saw me in Paris once, and he called my house in Paris. He was like, can you come over? I was like, all right, fine. There's the car's in front of your house already. I was like, I'm asleep. I was like, okay, fine. So I threw on like this old vintage dress that was hanging on a chair. I threw it on, whipped on, put some makeup on, whatever. Anyway, I got there, and I had on my police shoes, and he hated those police shoes. And I loved wearing police shoes. They were so comfortable. He's like, you look awful.
Damn.
And I was like, really? I was like, he goes, look at you. You're in one of the fashion capitals of the world, whatever. And I said, Prince, it's 3:00 in the morning. I'm sorry I didn't put my ball gown on to come over here. I was like, I'm sorry. I was just like, and, I got a whole lecture. And that was just, his way of, because I started to kind of pull away a little bit after Under the Cherry Moon a little bit. I kind of, it was kind of like my time to just go. And I have a tendency, when I start to get emotionally overtaken by something that hurts me, I will leave. I'll just walk out the door. And I've done it many times with people. I've walked out and never gone back and left everything in a house before. Everything. So I will do that. And that was just a way, like, oh, so you're here. And I was like, yeah, and that was just our dynamic.
What was it?
Then,
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, I was. What was the dynamic like on the set of Graffiti Bridge?
Well, by the time I got there, I was in such a foul mood about how small my part was. Again, because the first script was quite pretty. It was really nice, and it just seemed rushed, and that he had, wasn't taking a minute to just think about what he wanted to do, and he just made a commitment to do it, and he was going to just do it no matter what. And he was really excited about the sets, and that he was directing it, and he was really, really thrilled. And he had Ingrid working on it, and he tried to keep good spirits as best he could. And I think he really thought it was going to work. I mean, it just...
Did you think it was working?
I don't know what happened. Did
you think it was working as you guys were doing it? Okay.
I wasn't sure. I thought that his fan base would have really stuck by him, but after Under the Cherry Moon, see, I didn't understand why no one liked Under the Cherry Moon. I thought it was really very old-time 1930s movies, and I loved that. Because I'd watched movies like that with him before, and I knew what he was getting at. I just think that the world was becoming harder and a little more darker around these times, and I also think that our people, African Americans, had a very difficult time seeing themselves in these roles. There was some kind of disconnect, a refusal of like, what? Are they taking the piss? What is this for real? And yet I'd met guys like that in France, by the way, easily. It wasn't like it was an anomaly. It did exist, guys who just could run a woman to death in France,
Yeah, I think
that's why I tell some friends here in America, get out of America, go to Europe.
Right. I think people were so enamored and so used to seeing Prince, that Purple Rain sort of Prince. And I think just looking at Graffiti, now I love not Graffiti, but I love Under the Cherry Moon. But I know, like, for like my cousins and people who were heavy Prince fans, even before I was, they sort of pulled back from that movie. And I know too, like some people felt some kind of way because the lead was a white lady, and they just felt like
I also think I agree. I don't think she was the right one for it to be. If you really want to know the truth, I think that was the disconnect because nobody cared about her character.
Right.
It didn't feel like the chemistry was. She was too austere almost. I don't know. For me, that was the one drawback.
Yeah, it just didn't. You didn't. I mean, her character, and nothing to shade on her character. It was just something that it was foreign. It was like a foreign sort of. She was rich, girl or whatever in the family sort of thing. And when we think of Prince or something, it was just kind of like I thought he would have an Apollonia or what I mean, or somebody that
Right.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. We just didn't. It just seemed that part of it seemed off. Initially, and I think just people were so used to seeing Prince in a certain way, and I was just like, And as you kind of mentioned, it became a little more like I guess he had to do that to get bigger fame or whatever, play the game. I do understand that, but I just think we probably was kind of like But I love the movie, but I can see how that sort of plays into a little bit. But and then going to not Cherry Moon, but Graffiti Bridge. I think with that one too, it was like, and as you said, things got darker. I wouldn't say they necessarily got dark, but definitely the influence of a different style and hip hop and things really started to come to the forefront. And I just think a lot of that stuff was just like, yo, this looks like Prince is on some other stuff at this point. That's why we would just look at it in the streets. It was like, he's a bad motherfucker, but it's like, what's going, he seemed like he was. This just sound funny. He was on that Michael Jackson. You know what I mean? Like he was such a huge thing. Yeah. It was like you almost didn't relate to him a little bit because he was just doing his own thing. You know what I mean?
I think that he had started to cut people out of his life around that time, and there was a level of it was a bit of a gilded cage and not trusting anyone and thinking that, starting to see people maybe in the worst light. And when you start to see people in their worst capacity, you actually, sadly, only attract it. It's just like if you focus on, okay, so there's thieves in the temple and all of this and the darkness. He was so focused on dispelling darkness from his life that he actually, I feel, attracted it.
Interesting.
One thing, back to Under the Cherry Moon, with the Mary Sharon character, now that I'm thinking about it, they had mentioned in the film that she had some type of mental issue, that character. They didn't play upon that, so that really didn't really give her a chance for the audience to care about her at all.
Exactly.
And with Graffiti Bridge, it's just like you said. So many people had been pushed away. You look at the film, and we fans know who the time is. But other than that, I'm like, well, who are these cats in the band? Who's
exactly.
Mr. Yo, let me rap? Who are these people? And
I know.
It did look a little different.
And it was hard to see him chasing a trend when he had been a trendsetter.
He was definitely chasing it at that time, definitely.
Yeah, he was. And that was kind of like, who am I? What am I going to do? It was like, I'm sure the label was like, we need this. We need, more. Belle Biv DeVoe had a hit. Like, all right. Okay. Because even some of our mixes around that time, we had Chris Lord Alge do a remix on one of my songs, and it had all that, you know what I'm talking about, that pop fizz stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's okay. But there was something for me that, authenticity is really important. And sometimes you have to just take a break sometimes and ride the wave and find other stuff for a minute. But, if anything facilitated any kind of one thing with him is that he was a workaholic. And, that's a lot of people praise that years ago with people. And we still do think, oh, they work so hard and they're just, oh, wow. It's a horrible thing to be because it's an addiction. And then what happens is when you're a workaholic, you find other stuff to facilitate the workaholism. You find things to keep that going, whether it be new people, new this, new that. You beat your body to a pulp. It's one of the most unhealthy things you could do to yourself physically, mentally. You need periods of a vacation. You know, going on a vacation, we went on a boat once, and I mean, I think we got halfway out, and he's like, I want to go back. And it was like, oh, man, okay, here we go. You know, it's like, dude.
So you got to have that balance in your life, I guess, right?
You totally do, and it's like, you do. Everybody needs it because it's your. But then his communal time with himself, I guess, was creating all these things in the music world. But somewhere along the way, it's like it just consumed him, you know, and that seems like music was his only friend. And that's beautiful, but it's really kind of heartbreaking a little bit too.
It's definitely a sacrifice. He definitely sacrificed a lot to be, you know, what he was and what he is to get there. You know, wasn't, you know what I mean? Like, as you said, it's not like he had to sort of maybe forego some of the things that people do in life because he's so focused on his mission or, you know.
His dad once told me that I was like Delilah. And I'd been in the hospital for a surgery, and so I remembered I woke up and everybody else had sent me flowers and beautiful things and just tons of flowers all over my room. And of course, Prince's basket was toys, candy necklaces. I mean, everything a 5-year-old girl would have loved. A little mini dollhouse. I mean, it was very, very cute. It stood out the most. See, this is the thing. You go, there's the guy who had the yachts who sent me like a gazillion flowers, and then there's the guy who sends me a basket of kids' toys. And who do you end up back with? The guy who sends you the kids' toys, because of course. You're like, who would do such a thing? And my mom was just shaking her head like, you know, like, oh, yeah, all right. So, you know, it's like then his father had said to me, he's like, you know, the thing with you two, you're kind of like Delilah. And I was like, Delilah who? And he was like, I said, Delilah in the Bible? Samson's Delilah? And he was like, yeah. And I said, well, that's not quite the compliment. He goes, well, you kind of make him weak. And I was like, I make Prince weak. And I was like, that's really not cool to say. He was like, not in a bad way. He goes, not completely like Samson. He goes, but he actually would sit and watch movies and do nothing. And I was like, well, what's wrong with this? Is that a weakness, just to want to do different things? You know, is it a weakness to want to go horseback riding? What mission have you guys given him, you know, on the day he got born? I mean, really, there's some kind of balance in life that needs to exist.
Talk to me about Mr. John L. Nelson. What kind of guy was he, you know, when you were around?
Loved him. He was funny. He was a man of principles, though. Very disciplined. He had a great sense of humor. He was super talented. He adored his son. He was a really good pool player. And very spiritual, religious. Like, God was very important to him. I mean, we once me and him walked out of a play, Cats. Yeah, we walked out because when the black cat popped up and had the red eyes, he was like, oh, no, I can't
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we left and came home, and Prince was like, hey, you guys are back already? I was like, yep. And he's like, what happened? His dad went in his room, and I was like, well. He goes, did you hear the Grisabella thing? I said, no, didn't even get to hear Memory. I said, no. We left sort of at the beginning when the cat comes up and jumps out of the garbage can. The black one is like, you know, starts talking about evil and whatever. The black cat was like, gotta go. So he was very like, he didn't like things to enter his energy that got him off of where he was. It was cute. He was adorable. And he and Prince worked well together, and I think Prince helped to reconstruct his creativity, and he got to understand his father's playing, because John L. would not just play a simple chord. He played the most beautifully intricate, astonishingly beautiful chords, and then Prince would know how to really assimilate that and help to bring some of John's dreams. I mean, it must have been a beautiful thing for him to see this collaborative thing work so well between the two of them, really.
Wow.
And he brought a sense of spirituality around. He really did, because at the end of the day, that was very important to him, his struggles.
Okay. Yeah, I always get the sense that as with a lot of sons, it seemed like he was really doing a lot of this because of his dad. I don't know if that's the way to say, like got it from him, you know?
Yeah, I think there's there's this thing between the father and the son. I'm convinced, maybe some karmic responsibility or something that had to be played out karmically. Because John L. was not going to get, it wasn't going to go any further than where it was until Prince got where he was. And Prince brought him out because, Mr. Nelson could, be kind of a hermit sometimes. And just live with his music. He, too, could just be happy with his music.
Wow. Did you meet Prince's mother as well? I assume you did.
Not a lot.
All right.
I remember meeting his little brother Omar when he was little, so it's always funny to see him now that he's grown up. You go, oh, wow, we were, oof. It was like, oh my gosh. So, yeah, she was a lovely woman. But that relationship was definitely, their thing.
Okay.
And I've never really liked meeting people's moms, to be honest. I mean, actually, as I got older, I started getting better at it with people. But, moms and sons, that's an interesting one, too.
Was he like a mama's boy or some sort? Or
no.
Oh, okay.
I just think that mothers always sense, like my mom sensed things things about my child. I do it with my kid. I know things. But I think that, he was quite gentle with her. So, it wasn't anything, he just was a really nice suburban kid, it seems like. You know what I mean?
It's hard to picture that in Prince.
It sounds really weird to say this, but yeah, they're really nice people.
You mentioned your daughter. Actually, your daughter's a singer too, right? Like she's got something coming out. I saw on your Facebook.
Yeah, she's on Fiction Records, and in London, and yeah, she's got her own thing coming out. It's funny. I mean, hopefully the information I've given to her is just based upon all the mistakes that I made. I mean, that's the role I just see myself in her life for her music, just to be like, look. Because I was so angry for so many years about the business. And most of my friends do hit that point in the music business where you're like, this is what it's come to, how people feel so used up. Musicians do, everybody. And that's always mind blowing when you hit that point. Like, here I am, and what? So it's difficult. And it can make friends, it's always wonderful if you can still be friends with people through it, because it's a nasty business. It's not worth fighting with your friends over masters, on a certain level, but if you stay friends take care of each other anyway.
Yes,
exactly.
Speaking of your friendship, so, man, this year has been heavy, but we have, Denise, Vanity.
Yeah.
And I read some of the stuff you were talking about where you had a chance to sort of get back together with, I think it was Susan, Apollonia,
Brenda. Yeah.
and reconnect with them. And if you don't mind, you said you guys all sort of got to link up with Prince sort of the last time.
Yes, except Brenda had left early. It was just me, Susan, Apollonia, and her sister, and a couple, my cousin and a friend and one of my closest friends, me and Apollonia's friends.
What was that like, you guys all getting back together at that time, you know?
I think when we got back together, it was great. I mean, it was under the circumstances, no. It was horrific. But I've often been saying that in life, you will always be a villain and a hero to somebody. There's somebody in your life you will play that either part in their lives, whether it's the person on the street that you yelled at, you're a villain. And for the rest of their life, they will have that imprinted in their brain. You don't get many second chances. So the first ones and first impressions are key. I often thought that, you know, coming back was really a kind of a very bittersweet gift from Denise to bring us together, because the people that did not show up to her service, you know, they weren't supposed to be there, because this was it was magical, and it was definitely some kind of intercedence going on to move the stars in heaven to facilitate what was to occur, which was this kind of, it was a goodbye in a really weird way. It was a hello and a goodbye. And it was also a touchstone of people who were important to each other at no matter what odds or anything we went through. I guess maybe that's why I'm so hard and very firm about those early years. And even though it seemed really oppressive with those women and challenging at times, at the end of the day, they were a part of something so part of my character and in my blood, like Brenda, Vanity, or Denise, and Susan. And then, of course, Apollonia coming in later. They really, that for me was a sign that this is where I'm rooted and where I'll be the strongest. And so when we saw him that night, it was as if we were all back the way we were, except one was missing, and it was Denise. And yet it was so heavy because she was totally hanging above her energy. And it was this really odd thing of like, here we are, you know, and one of us is not here at the table. And you don't go, oh, you know, what a horrible thing. It's just a silent acknowledgement of like the years that have passed, the years we earned together, and it had nothing to do. It's so interesting. Nothing to do with albums, songs, none of it.
Right.
It was just like a true thing of like, we were here to help you with your dream, Prince, and we were all a part of this really beautiful, sleepy dream. And it's and that's what mattered. And I think it was a gift from her. It was a true, the people who were there were supposed to be there. Because if one more had have been there that shouldn't have, it wouldn't have been the way it was. It wouldn't have gone down the way it did.
Right. What was conversation in terms of like, I think you were saying something that you had mentioned you guys should all go skydiving or something? Is that?
Yeah, I had I had said, you know, in acknowledgement of us being together at this state, I said, you know, we should all get together every year, one time, and do a weekend, a retreat, or go to Dubai and do stuff we've never done. Maybe we could go skydiving. And then everyone was like, and he was like, I'm not skydiving. And I started laughing. And then the girls were like, well, we're not skydiving. You can. And it was just a really cute thing. And it was just, you know, when private jokes that existed back then came up again. Prince had his private jokes when Susan and and Apollonia were on the stage, downstairs, so the people hadn't seen Susan in ages, and then Prince made his jokes about that with me, and I was like, you always said that. So it was kind of like, no matter how much you feel you've changed, people, that energy that was always there, it goes right back to what you all create together. And, it was right there. And I was, 18 again. And, and he was 26 or 24. It was really sweet. I mean, I did feel that there was an issue physically because he was really frail, and it was just an energy I picked up on, just something. And I'd known about his hips and his different kind of pain. I don't want anybody to think because I said I thought he was on something that he was knocked down, drag out, right. No, not at all. It's just, this is somebody I slept with them. I lived with them for a bit. I don't, and I'm very intuitive. End of story, hands down. And that's it. And it's like that person was close to me like my blood. So I don't care what people are like, oh, she hadn't been around forever. I don't care. Fuck you. It does. Right. Seriously, sometimes a stranger can see you on the street and read your soul in 2 seconds, and you've never met them.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just the way it goes. I can't explain it, but, that's just the way it is. What you do with it, it's like, we don't know. I don't know. I'm still come to terms with what does one do somewhere with all of that.
I mean, I assume you hadn't seen him in a while. I mean, did he look, I can understand you getting that vibe from him. Did he look like the Prince you knew? I mean, obviously everyone's sort of, has been through life experiences, but.
Yeah, but he was always so, weight conscious and figure thin. I put on some pounds, so I was like, well, maybe it's me because, I've got this little Robin body going on right now, maybe it's me. And I'm so big. I'm the big one tall. And I suddenly realized, damn, you are bigger than all these people. How did you do this? I mean, some people were always like, how come he never put you in Vanity 6? I was like, because I'm too damn big. I was like, it throw the whole look off. Are you kidding? Did y'all ever know? Most people don't know. I'm like 5'8.5". I'm tall.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that either. Hey, I don't know about the big part, but
big bones. Big bone girl. But it wasn't that. It was just an energy. It was just a very peaceful, calm, laughing about stuff. One thing that I can share that I said, Prince, I said, all of these women here, I said, have become such close friends of mine through the years. We touch base and whatever. And I said, and I have to thank you for that. I said, I would have never found them in this lifetime if it hadn't have been for you. And he said, oh, so now you're okay with it?
Hilarious. My man Prince.
That was the best. I fell out laughing. I was like, yeah. I went, yeah, well, yeah. So it took me a while to come around. So, yeah, I mean, but yeah, maybe less removed. I mean, him walking through was a little different than the past with our bands because everybody was so much more friendlier to each other backstage, or we all had interactions with each other. This felt a little bit more like Steve Jobs walking into a corporate facility with the workers. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Where you don't go, why are you wearing those shoes? You know what I mean? Or see, it was he definitely had a very different role, and it was exclusive to he was definitely the boss.
What?
And I can't imagine how lonely that must be. Although he and Van Jones, he spoke amazingly about him, and told me all about how they got the masters and stuff with Warner's, and he just said he's such a good guy. And when he spoke about him and their political conversations, he really, really, really seemed to trust him. He seemed to.
That's a whole other side of Prince, man, that I really love, that it sort of trickles out. You hear these stories and stuff of the things that he was doing, and the different stuff that he was supporting, and actually putting time and money into different causes and different things that was going on. That stuff is, to me, that made me just really look at him. I was like, you know what? He was a thorough dude. Like, you could see how he grew and changed, and I get the understanding that he was probably really about us early on, but as you kind of break down, he had to sort of navigate and play the game and get in the position where he could make these moves.
Totally. I mean, because even myself, even I was like, really, this is it? I'm going to go into advertising. It's like, I think that that's a natural progression, and he tried to stay and become an advocate for new artists, because even Susan ran up and said, Prince, Jill's daughter is singing, and he goes, I know. He's like, but he goes, Jill, it's not the same business it used to be. I was like, yeah, I know. He was like, she shouldn't sign her deal. He actually was against her signing the contract, and I was like, okay, calm down. It's not, it became a big thing for a minute. I was like, calm down. All right. But the thing was, we were all just really having a great conversation, and he still was going on about young artists and what they need to do. Mm-hmm. And the girls were like, you should work with her. You should work with her. I said, I don't know if Zeus is, is going to want this, But he was like, no, sure. So if I would have to say that there was a issue with his future aspirations, I don't get that he didn't have them anymore. Do you know what I mean? Because he's like, Jill, I'll talk to you in a month or so. He goes, give me a month. And he goes, when I'm finished with this. I was like, okay, cool. So, that's the hardest part for me, because it's just kind of like, and all of us, because the girls were planning to go up in the summer with their kids. So that's why it just sort of was like, oh my God. And the worst part of it is that when Apollonia and I were driving back from Oakland, we were in the car and we were speaking about how horrible the weekend, beautiful but horrible. But I made this really weird comment. I said, I don't even want to think about what it would be like when he goes. I said that in the car. Wow. She remembers that. Because I don't know why I wouldn't even think of things. I said, I don't even want to think about that. This would be the worst thing ever. And it's true. And when he did go, it was just like, I really couldn't believe it. Couldn't, and still really don't. And it physically made me sick. That was the other thing. I just physically was sick to my stomach.
I can imagine. What do you think of his? Or what would you want people to think of his legacy? What do you think was important to know about Prince?
The mind that never stopped. I think he was really in touch with such a higher dimension, and he trusted, the only thing he trusted was that those gifts. And he was also, I think, full of gratitude for some of his gifts. I think that, I think the legacy should be someone who really created their own Camelot and sort of opened up doors for people to know that they could do the same. Jimmy and Terry went on to create theirs and to create their world within it, and to really, it's a beautiful thing. To really be so in touch with your dream and to never give up on it on that level.
I kind of want to wrap up a little bit, but I wanted to make sure too that we talk about, at least, you went on to do 3 other albums. Am I correct? You've done 4 albums total?
Yeah, I think I did. Yes.
I know you're doing the tech thing, but is there still a desire to do music, or are you sort of transitioning?
Yeah, I love doing music. I'll probably do some shows coming up just because, I just want to. I just feel that I want to do it. I was performing a lot in New York at one point, and different places. And that was the first record I did outside of working with Prince was an album called Two that I worked on with Chris Bruce, who has worked with like Seal and Michelle Ndigacello. He's one of my close friends. That was sort of a healing record for me. It was just after losing everything and whatnot in my life, I did that album. Albums have to move me. I'm the type of person for any of my music. It usually is always from something I'm working out. So for me, it's always been some kind of way for me to work something out in my life. This new record that I just released around the time Prince passed was a dance music, and it was me coming into my own. And I'd been doing a lot of meditation and mantras and understanding spirit and energy. So it's interesting. So I found a nice balance with that. And then after that, I didn't really tour with that because this happened, his passing. And it just felt kind of strange to be out. You know, I don't know. I just wasn't feeling it. So now, for some reason, in the last couple of weeks, even in the middle of working at my company, I've been writing again and doing more R&B music again. And I haven't really written like that in ages. That is what's very weird. Very, very weird.
I would love to hear some of that.
Yeah, that one is I have a good feeling about what it is because it's actually helping me.
Okay.
Creativity for me has always been a way to manifest and to heal. It's like everything we speak about. You either manifest it or you can heal yourself. You got to watch the words that we speak because it's kind of losing people is no one likes that. This has been tough.
Also, I was going to congratulate you on your marriage. You just had an anniversary, correct?
Oh, yeah, I had an anniversary. 5 years we are now.
5 years. Congratulations.
So, yeah, it's my second marriage, yeah.
You know, the pictures of you and your husband on Facebook going to sound like a big sensitive, girl here, but you guys are so in love, and it comes across real clear in your pictures because you are just radiant when you stand next to him. You really are.
Oh, thank you. He's a Gemini, too. Funny. The first husband was a Pisces who's gone on to become a yogi. And that was a wonderful thing, too. As far as the reason I'm bringing him up is because, the universe gives you funny things. I was always the kind of person who'd leave something, never talk to exes again. Never. Bye. Slam the door. With having my daughter with the first marriage forced me to grow a little bit and learning how to mend relationships and to actually have better ones than the ones that you think. So when it came back to with the girls and everybody getting really involved and knowing that the core of it really exists in all of your relationships, once that started changing and how I started interacting a little bit with Prince online over the years, and I'd defend him in certain things, and he would post something about me, that was like an invisible way of communicating. I mean, a real kind of telepathic, and I knew we were fine. I was like, I know we're cool. But once I started changing those relationships and how I looked at them and started looking at each person from those times with love and not like, jealousy or resentment, my life changed. And I met my husband and things started changing. They started to fall into place. And if I had to say anything to anybody, it's revisit old things that got fractured and do it sooner than later. Because it really does bring you back to why you came here. We've all known each other before. Like even you two. I don't know why you guys had to do this podcast, but we decided it maybe hundreds of years ago or whatever. I mean, it's maybe taking people out on their own spiritual journey, but the thing is, I'd rather think of it that way because I'd rather see us more connected than divided. And that's a better way for me to live with people.
I feel that. I feel that. One last thing, if you will, and I will hope. I wanted to see if you can speak to. We got a lot of ladies, young and old, who listen to this show, and one of the things that I also wanted to get across with you, because when I look at your life and from what I can see from the outside, I see the young girl who meets this guy who hopefully I can say was sort of like the love of her life at that time, or one of your first loves, right? True. Can you say something to women when they come across these guys? And you mentioned something where is a situation where you almost engulfed with everything about this man, but you have come out to be your own woman, and you're your mother, and you have a 5-year marriage, and very successful. We didn't go too deep, but that transition from the very public life to the life you live now had to be a journey in itself. But what can you say to these women who meet these men and maybe getting overtaken by the love and just everything that man sort of brings to a woman, and still be a woman yourself? Like, how do you, if you'd have known what you knew now and you met Prince at that age, obviously you probably would have approached it totally different, or maybe not. But can you
totally? I mean, but maybe not. I wouldn't change a thing.
Okay.
With the way it went down, not anything, because I had to start to understand who I was. But could I repeat that with another individual man? No, never. He had to be the one that I did this with. I also know that in the situation, I had my little weird things too, that, I was a little spoiled, a little bit, pampered. And, he had a habit of doing that with people who he really cared about. He would totally spoil you and pamper you, and make it very difficult for anybody stepping up in that line. However, if you don't really know who you are and really understand, a person cannot be, you can't force anything. It has to be organic. The relationship has to run its course. I could say, don't do this, don't do that, but the reality is it has to run its course, and when you decide that it's no longer serving you, you'll change it.
Okay.
Like, you will. I mean, it's always good to have a safe space for yourself, and you realize that it can't always be another person. But when you get tired of something and you want to change it, you'll change it. I've told many girlfriends, I have one who's been sitting in something for a while. I mean, it's weird. It's like, not to go into something. Last relationship I had before I met my husband, I thought was really cool, whatever. It was a little dull, but whatever. But anyway, the guy ended up going out with my best friend afterwards or during. I don't know, but that's neither here nor there. Of course, at one point I was like, what the hell? What the hell? And I was mad. I was like, even though I'd married, moved on, my thing was, how could this happen? But my friend, all of this stuff. But you know what? When I thought about it, I said, wow, I'm the best person this could have happened to for them, because I know what it's like to be in a circle or triangle relationships. I know what it's like. And so the attachment is when you pull back. And if you detach from something, you'll get to see the picture so much more clearly. And then you actually decide how vested you really are. People do what they want to do in this life. You can keep telling them, and they can see the same thing happening to you, happening to themselves, and it won't change them. It's when they really just get tired of it and want the change.
Wow.
That's it.
All right.
There's no other way. But I've been lucky because I've met some of the most amazing people in my life. Prince was one of those. I mean, what girl couldn't have been luckier to have that really be your first love? That's pretty, he got shit done. And that's, and he did keep his word to as much as he could. And I could only hope to be able to be the same thing to somebody else,
Right.
And I'm so happy and thankful that it brought so many other beautiful people in my life. I have all these amazing people I met online that had these curious lives to me. I'm curious about some of these fans. I'm like, what did they do? And how did they get here? Because somewhere I'm connected to all of them. And I just go, what were we all doing in the before world before we all got here? We all must have really had a good time. So I feel like I'm surrounded by good people.
Right on. Okay. Well, there you go. Thank you for that, Jill. I know that somebody listened to that, and that's gonna touch them. They'd be like, that was for me. So shout out to them. Shout out to you and your family.
Thank you, and to you guys.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Where can people find you online?
You could go to my Facebook, and I guess it's Jill Jones on Facebook. There's 2 pages. There's Jill Jones Universe, I think, something like that. Okay. And then, it just comes up as Jill Jones. There's one or the other, and that's the easiest. And then Instagram, I'm always Jonesy Love. Okay. So that's always a good one.
All right. Well,
Twitter, I think I'm Jill D. Jones. See, I got a lot of names.
You go on that social media. That's what's up. All right.
Yeah.
Big Sexy and Sack, where can they find you, sir?
Well, you know me. Excuse me. You know me. Twitter, Big Sexy and Sack, and Facebook under my civilian identity of Mark Wiggins. All
right. And I got a shout out to all our listeners out there, all our supporters. Thank you guys so much for listening and supporting us. We're going to keep delivering and keep holding up this Prince music and just everything about it because, hey, we are fans and we really appreciate all the blessings that has come from it. And like I always say at this time, work it like a job. We'll see you next time. Peace. All right. Whoop.